It was the spring of 2014. A year since the first season ended, it was time for Jojo Part 3, Stardust Crusaders. Many people were very excited and few proclaimed this to be the best part of Jojo altogether. I think they would do again when parts 4, 5 and 6 were announced. Personally, it's not my favorite by far. I feel it drags on way too much, especially in the middle part. And the Villain of the Week format is a hit or miss if you ask me. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and I hope that everyone did not already leave hearing me say that. So let's get straight into it. The story continues where the teaser of the previous season ended, with Dio being fished out of the ocean. And we get introduced to Jojo, to sponge Jojo, as well as the concept of stands. Stands being the new battle system going forward, as Araki felt that Hammond was required for defeating vampires, and those going away would make the power obsolete, resulting in the creation of stands, a power unique to every person using it. Stands can be a bit of a hit and miss with how interesting they are and in their execution, especially in part 3. For example, we got Magician's Red that throws fireballs, and Bested that magnetizes the opponent, which are fairly simple concepts and pretty straightforward. But then you have stuff like Justice that can control an infinite amount of corpses as its army, or Hangman, which can only attack from reflective surfaces, making battles a bit more complex. Stands can be anything from inanimate objects, like a book or a gun, or not show up in some cases at all, like Hermit Purple which only shows its vines. And Knoom, that allows its user to play the shapeshifter role in Among Us, but the majority of them are humanoid in shape, but never completely human, and in later passages mostly people in weird gimp suits. As for Jojo himself, however, I cannot say he's my favorite Jojo, especially not after young Joseph. He doesn't really say all that much. And generally he just acts like a cool guy, but he is a modest boy at heart. His stand? He can punch things really hard and really fast. Joseph also returns, now as a dapper old man, but still as much of a shithead really. I do feel he got bad luck with the stand catcher though. Hermit Purple doesn't really do much more other than letting him grab things from a distance and make telepathic pictures to spy on Dio from afar. But maybe Araki did that to balance him, so he doesn't become too powerful since he also knows Hammond. But he really only uses Hammond 2 times this part anyway, so what gives? We also get to know his friend, Avdol, who mostly feels like this part's speedwagon, explaining various stands and their powers. And we quickly get introduced to our first enemy, Kakuin, who after being freed from Dio's influence, joins the group on a trip to Egypt, because he has a hot for Jotaro's mother. Oh, and to get back at Dio for what he did to him. So starts the journey to Egypt, and a constant attack of Dio's stand users. And before they can safely make it to Hong Kong, their airplane gets taken down by the stand user Tower of Grey. And in Hong Kong they meet a 5th party member, Polnareff, who joins them after being freed from Dio's influence, just like Kakuin. Now I'm not sure if it is a specific Blu-ray release we have here over in Europe, but at times a bunch of Polnareff's dialogue and swearing was subbed in French. Well, you didn't have to go that extra mile, but thanks I guess. From here on out starts a deluge of various opponents, Dark Blue Moon, Strength, Ebony Devil and Yellow Temperance. 2 of these I even forgot existed until rewatching this, those being Blue Moon and Ebony Devil. Strength I only remember because... Monkey! And Temperance because, well, because of this. And this is the point where the namesake of this video comes from. Part 3 is ripe with memes. And even at points the characters themselves do not take the situation serious. And at this time we get the interesting idea where Dio informs Joseph and Avdol that there is a spy among them. However, nothing really gets on with this sadly, as it is immediately revealed 5 minutes later that it is just a shape-shifting stand user. One of 2 shapeshifter stands in this part by the way. Also the first of many dead dogs in this season happens, where a good boy turns into a good boy. Next off we get introduced to Whole Horse, and Hangman, the stand user who killed the sister of Polnareff years before the story. We also get the first of many toilet jokes, because for some reason there's a lot of those in this part. Toilet humor is the peak of comedy after all.
Oh my god!
Polnareff does end up getting his revenge, but not after his action got Apple shot in the head and dying. Resulting in Polnareff learning he shouldn't be as selfish as he has been, and that he can rely on his travel companions and now friends for help. And whole horse runs away, and makes me wonder if he is a Joestar, because he is sure putting that family technique to good use. After that ordeal, Joseph gets clowned on for an entire episode by the stand of the Empress. And in the following episode, Wheel of Fortune casually breaks the fourth wall, saying part 3 ends here because he killed Jojo. My man, this part isn't even halfway yet. That brings us to, in my eyes, the highlight of the first season, the fight against Justice. Which is weird, considering Eniaba got built up to be Dio's right hand, but after 2 episodes, a dead dog later, and a toilet joke later, she gets off by Star Platinum giving her the big suck. After that, the pace grinds to a halt for the rest of the season in my eyes. The group takes care of 2 more stands, the lovers, and the absolute joke that is the sun.
Oh my god!
We do not even get to see the stand user until he is dead, and we get the first badum-tish from Kakyoin, which becomes a bit of a recurring thing from here on out. The next villain bothers me, Death 13. Conceptually an interesting idea, but I cannot stand the little lolly bastard. We get some conflict within the group, where everyone starts to distrust Kakyoin for some reason. No one believes him about being attacked by a stand and calls him crazy, and start to doubt his allegiance. What the hell, guys? If this was 3 episodes then sure, but not this late after the fact. It ends up feeling weirdly contrived after all this time, and it annoys me to no end. I get that there has to be some drama in the group, but it happens way too late for that to make sense. Also, fuck that dog. After this series of events, we find out that after all it didn't actually die, and he survived the gunshot through his head just barely. However, he acts kinda off now, probably thanks to the brain damage, and Polnareff gets a lesson to be careful what you wish for, making Polnareff the character who get the most growth in character development in this part. The first season ends with crashing a submarine, proving 5 guys in a tin can was always a bad idea. Finally arriving in Egypt, surely almost at the finale, right? Oh dear.
Oh no!
In the second season, the pacing slows down even more, and this is where the Villain of the Week formula really starts wearing its welcome for me. And it is still a while off before we reach Dio's mansion. First off, Iggy gets introduced. Oh, Iggy. Iggy, in my eyes, is a completely unlikable piece of crap until he redeems himself later on, near the finale. He gets a whopping 2 fights in, one where he gets introduced, and one against Pet Shop, where he actually becomes a likable character. For the other conflicts the gang runs into, he's conveniently absent, or he just sees things happen and walks away. But I do have to say it is clever how they hinted at Iggy in the first opening. As for these enemies I speak of, well, Araki at this point ran out of tarot cards, giving the last one, the Fool, to Iggy. So what does he do now? He finds the nearest deck of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, now that we are in Egypt, and uses the ghost as stands. Cap, the first of 9 goals however, is definitely one of the more interesting ones, and even knocks Kakyoin out of the running until the finale video. After that, Oingo and Boingo. Aww. This duo is probably my least favorite encounter. I'm not sure why, I just do not like them. Boingo has this horrible laugh, and his brother just isn't very smart. Perhaps because I knew it was coming when rewatching, I didn't find it nearly as bad as the first time around. Also, this is where we get a second stand user that can shapeshift.
Oi! 隠れてんじゃねえぜ! 何者だ! 出てこい! 出てこいと言っとるんだ! こら! 早くせんか!
After this duo, we get the Sword of Anubis, which is a possessed sword, taking control of whoever happens to hold it. Like this poor fool. Then we get to a quartet of episodes all taking place at the same time. Joseph, the clown that he is, touched a rock with a power outlet in the middle of the desert, because that is a smart idea. And he falls under the influence of Bestet's magnetism, along with Avdol, and they become a literally inseparable duo. Man, Joseph gets to deal with the most stupid stands, and it is always his fault too somehow. At the same time, Polnareff gets turned into Smolnareff, thanks to a lassie, who really should be on some watch list and not be allowed near children, and proceeds to run around naked for a while. I did not go into this season expecting to see Polnareff's baguette, but here we are, somehow. And as I alluded to earlier, during all of this going down, Iggy just kinda wanders around, not wanting to do shit to save them. Thanks Iggy, thanks for nothing. The next end user on the list is one of the highlights of the season, Darby the Gambler. You get treated to some nice mind games, bluffing, and high stakes gambling for 2 episodes to win the souls of Polnareff and Joseph back. Jojo will manage to bluff so hard in poker that Darby straight up chokes from the tension and he passes out and loses. This episode also reminds me that I really should get around watching Kaiji Ultimate Survivor sometime. Before we finally get to Dio, we get subjected to Boingo's antics one more time, along with Whole Horse this time. After those clowns left the stage, we get to Iggy's redemption arc. Iggy, who was wandering the streets of Cairo, with some dumb luck finds the mansion of Dio. However, the mansion is guarded by the Falcon Pet Shop, who also possesses the sand for some reason. I swear, they're just sending stands out to animals at this point. 2 dead dogs and one hell of a fight later, losing one of his legs during the ordeal, Iggy redeems himself and becomes an actual character, and I can't help feeling bad for the little guy now. On the way back he gets found by Kakyoin, who finally healed from his wounds, and together they group up with the rest of the gang. The crew, now together again, prepares to face Dio to end the conflict. However...
Oh, that's a baseball!
Darby the Younger shows up and challenges the group for some games. Kakyoin gets outplayed and loses his soul, which gets stuffed into a doll. I do not know what happened in the Darby household, but these brothers sure are messed up collecting people's souls for fun. Did their father leave for cigarettes and never return? Some serious gaming by Jojo later.
Yes.
And cheating from Joseph, they return his soul and punch Darby in the face, and we are back on track for the finale.
Yes. Oh my god.
The other 3 foolishly enter the mansion while the rest is gaming, and after totally not planting a death flag, Avdol dies, for real this time. Just like that, sucked into the void, never to be seen again. And just as Dio's most loyal servant is about to kill Polnareff the same way, Iggy sacrifices himself to save him. Now, I knew this was coming, but after finally redeeming himself and becoming likable, it is still pretty sad. Alas, protagonist or not, Iggy cannot outrun the fate of being a dog in Jojo. And then Vanilla Ice defeats himself, because he's not very smart, by not realizing that as a vampire, he is weak to sunlight. Polnareff is the first one to reach the final staircase to Dio's quarters. However, Dio uses the wall to partake in a little trolling, and keeps moving Polnareff down the staircase. It is at this point that the other 3 show up, and they set out together to take down Dio once and for all, and it is time for the grand finale. The finale, Dio's World, is the best part of the season hands down. It's taken 44 episodes of build up to get us this point, and it's going to be one hell of a showdown. And the first thing the crew does after reaching Dio is running the fuck away, the God honor that family technique. Dio takes chase in a car, partaking in some trolling a random senator, and killing some random pedestrians in the meanwhile. After catching up to them, Kakyoin takes the fight to Dio, and he lures him to the rooftops. He sets up a trap in order to find out how Dio's stand actually works. It succeeds, but at the cost of his lie. And with his dying breath, he managed to inform Joseph about the time-manipulating ability of the world. Man, it really sucks for Kakyoin to die here, after being put out of the commission at the very start of the 2nd season. We didn't really get to see all that much of him here, and it's a shame because I quite liked him. After this, Joseph realizes the potential of Hermit Purple, and he becomes Spider-Man. Joseph manages to meet up with Jojo, but before he can tell him about Dio's time powers, time gets frozen and he gets taken down. Not by punching him, however, because Joseph has wrapped himself in Hermit Purple vines and fused with Hammond. The 2nd time this part and the last time we will see Hammond being used in the series. So, Dio decides to throw a dagger at him instead that he cannot block. Angered by the death of his friend and his grandfather, Jojo proclaims he will beat Dio to a pulp. Dio decides to play along, and the 2 start beating the crap out of each other, and the best fight of part 3 begins. During the fight it gets revealed that the World and Star Platinum are actually the same in their power, and Jojo is now slowly awakening to use time stop abilities. Also for some reason Jojo and Dio can now both fly. Yes, they can just do that. It doesn't get explained, they just fly now. During the fight, Jojo's time stop abilities grow steadily, but Dio still gets the upper hand. Polnareff tries a sneak attack on Dio at some point, but to little avail. After some mind games between the 2, Jojo finally manages to critically damage Dio, but he gets away by clinging to a car passing by, trying to escape into the nearby sewer. What follows is one of my favorite moments from this fight. However, Dio outplays Jotaro, and he gets back to the unconscious body of Joseph, and he drains the blood from his body, attaining more power in an instant. Now, I'll be honest, after getting the Joestar blood, Dio kinda looks like a fuckboy. Personally, I'm not a fan. Give me glorious topless Dio back, please. Joseph's spirit shows up and tells Jotaro that the journey and the time spent with him is fun, and as the spirit vanishes, Jotaro loses all his remaining cool and goes for the kill. But powered up Dio easily gets the upper hand, and with his time-stopping abilities now greatly increased, he stops Jotaro in time, and he goes for his finishing move. Jotaro survives, however, by him mastering his new time pose in the last moment, and he finally finishes off Dio with one well-placed punch. On the way out of the city in an ambulance, Joseph gets his blood back, and true to his younger self, he trolls Jotaro about acting like he got taken over by Dio. Seconds before he gets punched in the face, he admits this was a joke, and Dio's remains turn into ash in the sun, and the 100-year-long struggle is finally over. Dio dead, Joseph's daughter and Jotaro's mother saved. They think back to the friends they lost and the adventure they had. At the airport, they say their goodbyes to Polnareff, and promise to meet again at some point, which never happens as far as I'm aware. And that is how part 3 ends. I am not going to lie, I was not particularly looking forward to rewatching Stardust Crusaders, truth to be told. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate it. But if it wasn't for rewatching it with someone else for the first time viewing, I'm not sure if I would have rewatched it on my own again. The first time I watched it was back when it was airing, and I felt it dragged on at times, not helped of course by the 2 separate seasons, and to this date still the highest episode count for a part of Jojo. However, upon rewatching, I enjoyed part 3 a lot more than I did back then. It probably helps being able to instantly continue watching as opposed to having to wait a week for another minor villain being defeated. As for Araki, he definitely found his stride with things and how he wanted to write, as this is roughly the template of all the Jojo parts going forward. Silly jokes, villains of the week, and just bizarreness. Jojo is never going to be a complicated story, but it will always be a fun time, that much is guaranteed. I do find it slightly weird that out of all the characters, Polnareff is arguably the one with the most growth. Jojo only gets to solve problems and take care of Dio at the end. Also, I need to mention the soundtrack before I forget about it. And it's not all that amazing, at least not compared to the soundtracks for part 1 and 2. They aren't bad, but they aren't really memorable either, despite a whopping total of 73 tracks. There are a handful of good songs, but there are a great deal that reuse the same leitmotif of Stardust Crusaders, for a different mood, and get used multiple times each, and I have a hard time remembering which one is which. My favourite song being Setting Out, which is one of the very first tracks. Also, despite how nice Last Train Home is for the second ending song, I cannot help but feel Walk Like an Egyptian would have fitted better seeing the location. Both of the openings, however, are great, and I don't have much to add to that. The second opening having the vocalist from the other 3 songs in it is a great touch, and it makes it feel like the finale to the overarching plot so far. As the Raiders goes on the personal tier list, right in the middle I suppose. It's not as good as part 2 for me, not by a long shot, but it's nowhere near as lacking as part 1 was either. I wonder if I have the same opinion when rewatching part 4, because I kinda felt the same way about it when it aired. I also wasn't doing too well back then, so maybe that influenced my opinion about part 4. However, there is also the video of part 4 that is coming up next, so stay tuned for that. First of all, if you made it to this point, thank you for your time and watching this video till the end. Second, truth to be told, I'd hoped to have this video out a lot sooner. But after the Bleach video, I got distracted and ended up playing Persona 4, and after that, I was still unhappy with the first video in this series months ago. So I decided to redo that one first, and even that took way longer than it should have, but hey, here we are. Once again, thank you for watching. This was my name is Zora, and I hope to see you next time.